Hari Om. Shanno Mitrasyan Varunah Shanno Bhavatvariyana Shanno Indro Bruhaspatihi Shanno Vishnurukramah Namo Brahmane Namaste Vayo Tvameva Pratyaksham Brahmasi Tvameva Pratyaksham Brahma Vadishyami Aratam Vadishyami Satyam Vadishyami Tammamavatu Advaktaramavatu Avatu Mam Avatu Vaktaram Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. I thank you all for the happy presence you have given me this evening. Thank the organizers who have created this opportunity this evening. And the topic for today is the power of thought. It is a vast subject and it is as vast as the air and atmosphere around us. What air is around us, thoughts are in our mind. Just as the air in the atmosphere takes many directions according to the atmospheric pressure and environmental conditions. Similarly, our thoughts will take many directions according to the environment and the stimulation we give to ourselves. But often the stimulation is given by others to our thought, and that is what we call conversation. When two people are talking, the one gives the stimulation of the thoughts of the other. Hence, the direction of thought force is random. It depends upon the chance. Many subjects come and go while we make a conversation, and many times it seems there is no control. We don't know sometimes what subjects we are going to think and speak, and most of the day is spent like that by many of us. When we properly consider how a thought is born and how it is nourished and transmitted, we can understand a very beautiful process going on. When we make a special study of it, we understand that there is a thought evolution and that also the forces within and around us are rearranged with every thought we produce. In course of time, we come to understand that it is a great responsibility to produce a thought and make it escape from our mind. Then once we begin to understand this responsibility, we will be careful in producing thoughts, nourishing them and making them escape into other. A fine truth will be understood by us, that is, thoughts make channels of energy. When two people are speaking, producing thoughts about each other, we can imagine that it is a game of thought, that is a play of thought, just as we find the play of football and the play of tennis. Conversation is often nothing but a play of, but sometimes it is also a battle. So we have mainly two types of thought force. The one is battling of thoughts, the other is a play with thought, and a third one is a responsible play with thought. That is possible only when we know the responsibility of producing a thought. First, when we apply our common sense to thought production, we see that one man speaks and the other man obeys. In another case, the one man speaks and the other man understands. These two processes will explain us that thoughts are transmitted from one person to another through the medium of sound. Though it appears common, it is a very subtle process that is going on between us. Because it is so very common, we do not bestow our thought about the process. If I make some sounds here, the sounds escape into the space. They are translated into vibrations. Again, your ears receive the vibrations, they translate them into syllables, and the mind translates the syllables into words and sentences, and also it translates them into thought. This whole process is going on while we are conducting conversation, but we do not think much about this process simply because it is so very easy and so very common. The mechanism of thought production is given free of cost to us. The transmitting and the receiving sets are given by nature to us by birth. That is why many times we do not grow conscious of the mechanism. Many are the gifts that are given by nature to us, and often we use them without knowing their existence at all. Generally, we make the benefits according to our own capabilities, and often we die without knowing the existence of these gifts. But there are people who bestow a little thought over these things and try to understand the subtle processes. As they understand this process, they make a beautiful architecture of their thought about the whole process, and they bring to yet this architecture, they externalize the whole architecture in the form of what we call the books of great authors. There will be the graphic representation of the thought architecture in books, and we are expected to decode the architecture. When we learn a language and use it in conversation or reading books, we are only learning to decode the language of thought. And whenever we read the books of great authors, we are decoding the thought architecture of the author. The more we learn to decode it carefully, the more we can decode it according to the author. Otherwise, we will decode it according to our own understanding. The result is we produce our own thought architecture after reading a great book. And what we receive is not the thought architecture of the author, but our own thought architecture. Many times we do this when we read the books of great people. We will understand according to our own capability to understand, and the result is the thought architecture we produce sometimes has nothing to do with the thought architecture of the author himself. And since great authors have beautiful architectures of thought, and since many times we are not trained to produce such beautiful architectures, the architecture we produce will not be so beautiful as the architecture the author of the book produces. The result is two people reading the same book, trying to receive the thoughts of the same author, have two different opinions about the same author. And sometimes they begin to discuss about the author, and the discussion is in different levels from each other. I begin to discuss according to my own architecture of thought, and you too do the same thing. The result is there are two different architectures in two brains. There is no concurrence between the two thoughts about the same author. We should bestow a little thought about this process, because many times we are doing much injustice to great authors. We can have our own thoughts and we can produce our own thought architecture. There is nothing bad in it, but if we think that it is the thought architecture of the author of the book, we often deceive ourselves and deceive others. Generally, unless we are very careful about our thought, and unless we understand the process of thought production and the power of thought, we commit this mistake. But there are experts who can read the books of great people in a scientific way. They are passive when they are reading the books of others, because there are two ways of understanding thoughts of others. One is to know what the author wants to convey. The other is to know whether the author has thoughts which we like or not. So, in the second case, we will have our own conclusions about the thoughts of the author. There is nothing bad in doing so. We call our conclusions the conclusions of the author. If we read the books of critics about great authors sometimes, for example, the books of Shakespeare and Milton, we find diametrically opposite views about the same book. This is the result of the reader producing his own thoughts in the name of the author. If this were to be the case with established authors, what would be the fate of the people who misunderstand in conversations? When we do not spare great authors in trying to understand their thought, we do not care at all what the other man means when he speaks something. That's why we many times understand according to our own understanding, and the result is the battle of thought. To produce a game of thoughts, it requires much discipline. When you are playing a game, there should be sportsman's spirit in you, and only creative and constructive attitude about your thought. If your attitude is constructive, it produces a constructive thought. And the thought produces a constructive thought in the mind of the other person. And then, if the other mind is also disciplined and clean, then he will present a positive thought once again in a beautiful way and expresses it in the conversation. It once again touches your mind and it induces you to produce once again a beautiful thought. So, a game of thoughts is possible only when two disciplined souls speak to each other. When thoughts are transmitted from person to person through the medium of sound, the sound vibrations produced will be symphonic and harmonic, and they produce thoughts that are symphonic and harmonic only when two people who are well disciplined begin to speak to each other. If one of them happens to be disciplined, and if the other happens to be in the emotional plane, then it will be a one-way traffic of thought. Whenever the disciplined soul tries to express a harmonic thought by way of sympathy and love, or enthusiasm, or inspiration, the other person receives it and has a stimulation. But what is there in him will be stimulated. And if he has emotion in him instead of inspiration, the emotion will be stimulated by the good thought produced. And since the stir of the emotions is always inharmonic, it produces a disharmony in the other person. And a thought which is disharmonious will be produced by the other person. He expresses that thought in a most painful way, and the person who has produced the beautiful thought has to receive the painful thought in return, and therefore it is for him to develop shock absorbers in his thought platform. You see, in vehicles like motor cars and trains and aeroplanes, we have shock absorbers. When the vehicle is of a cheaper nature, the shock absorber will be defective, and when you are traveling in the vehicle, you will receive jolts. When the vehicle is of a higher nature, for example, a jet plane or a fast traveling express, the speed of travel will be more and the jolt produced is less. Sometimes, if the vehicle is perfect, the jolt produced is nil. This is what happens when the expert in thought producing begins to speak. When you pay regular attention to your thoughts and study the quality of the thoughts you produce, and then how to produce those thoughts and externalize those thoughts, if you understand how your thoughts travel to the other person, if you make a special study of these thoughts and begin to live in self-awareness, then you will automatically develop beautiful shock absorbers. That means you will never produce any shock by your thought production to others. The result is no one conversation of yours or no piece of your behavior will produce a jerk in anyone. Not only that, you will receive no shock or no jerk from the thought of anyone around you or the conversation of anyone around you, however painful it is, however rough and untrained it is, however emotional and astral it is. Whatever may be the ugliness of the thought produced by the other person, you will develop an art in such a way that the thought does not come to you and pierce you. You will receive very comfortably, having very smooth pads. This is what is called expert nature in thought transference. Then you are ready to play the game of thoughts. The same thing is said in the Bhagavad Gita. This is considered to be a part of spiritual training. Unless you develop this art, your yogic training is not complete. The Bhagavad Gita says, he is an expert in his life who does not produce a single jerk to anyone in this world, and who does not receive any jerk from anyone in this world, and then begins to live his life in this world, and then begins to live his life in this world. So, the thought production requires such a training. It does not require too much of observation to understand that thoughts stimulate energy centers and thoughts produce power waves. If you have an observation of a group of people quarreling on the street, this point becomes quite clear to you. When one person speaks, the other person has his face very red, and he begins to speak more vehemently, and when he speaks, the face of the first person will be more red. After 2 or 3 conversations, the thoughts produce redness of eyes, and they increase the temperature of the body of the 2 persons. Then the temperature will go so high that the common sense of the people is crowded by their emotions. There will be a stir of the emotions of the 2 people, as if a lake has been stirred by a buffalo when it enters and takes its bath. See, when you go into a forest, when there are forest lakes and when there are animals wandering in the forest, this is more common in the tropical countries like India. The animal enters into the lake. The water of the lake is pure and clear before the animal enters the lake. After the animal enters and returns, the lake is quite black or red with the clay. You have to wait a long time before you can see the lake once again clear. That is what happens when 2 people who are emotional and astral and animal nature produce thoughts upon each other, and it gives you a clear evidence that thoughts produce conversations in accordance to their nature, and each thought produces a channel of energy. When the channel is produced in a studied way, it helps the agriculture and to make the land fertile. Similarly, when your thought is produced in a studied way, it produces channels of energy in others and yourself in such a way that the mind is cultivated and made fertile. The capability to absorb the mind into the higher mind and the lower mind being distilled into the higher mind, leaving all the clay of emotions outside and allowing only pure energy as pure water. This is what happens when you know the art of understanding thought power. Then we will understand that there are 2 types of thoughts, the positive thoughts and the negative thoughts. Positive attitude produces positive thoughts, and positive thoughts produce positive attitude once again. They go on in an alternating manner. The attitude produces the thought, and the thought produces the attitude in himself and others. So that when once we break the succession, there is a confusion. When we know the art of not breaking the succession, the process becomes beneficial and utilitarian. That is, you can produce a chain of thoughts and attitudes in you and others also, and each chain can be produced in such a way that it makes a chain pattern which can be used to understand a science or an art or a humanity, and every chain of thought and attitude will work as a tutor and a master of yourself. You will feel that you are being trained by your higher nature, and often you will understand that you are having a proper understanding of difficult things. Generally, when our thoughts are not properly disciplined, we have the difficulty of understanding some intricacies of sciences and art. But when you begin to make a special study of your thought force and begin to produce thought chains alternating with attitudes, then you will find a peculiar result. Any difficult subject automatically explains itself to you without the necessity of an expert to explain to you. Except the technicalities of any subject, everything can be understood by yourself automatically. And any language structure becomes clear to your mind within a short time. And whenever you read a book which is difficult to others, you will find that it is not difficult, because the book begins to open to you simply. Within a short time, you will understand that you will read the author, you will not read the book. You will know the art of reading the author himself. Similarly, when you are conducting conversations, you will be reading the other persons and you are not tackling the thoughts of others. Because you remember that thoughts are produced by persons and it is with the persons you are conversing. But when we are not trained in this thought force, we think that we are speaking to others while we are speaking to their thoughts and not them. So this is one common experience which you come across when you begin to make a special study of your thought force and produce thoughts. Whenever you produce a positive thought, it induces positive attitude in others, and in return you will be presented with a positive thought. And once again, it induces in you a positive attitude. The whole process becomes constructive and creative. Before we make a special study and undergo this training, we will be doing much harm to ourselves and to the society by producing thoughts without knowing the responsibility. Now, if you look at the international situation, you will see how the world is heading to a crisis. Is it not the result of irresponsible thought production, producing wrong attitudes? Every negative thought produces a negative attitude in the other person. And again, you are responsible in producing a negative thought in others. And in return, you will respond negatively and once again produce a negative thought. When this happens between two persons, it may be negligible to the human society. When this happens between two countries or two nations, the result is disastrous. Mankind has received very painful lessons in the human history till now, and many are the wars that mankind fought till today. And every war proves the animal nature of the human being on this earth. That is an animal way of producing thoughts. That is the negative way of producing thoughts. When emotion were to be the cause of producing a thought, it induces emotion in others. Unless the other person has absorbed all the emotion in him. But 98% of we, the human beings, we live in emotion, and our emotional nature is not absorbed. Therefore, whenever an emotional thought is produced, there is an emotional response. It is not possible only when the other person has no emotion at all. But generally, it's not possible not to have emotion. Unless something more valuable replaces the emotion, it's not possible not to have emotion. What is it that can replace the emotion in us? It is what we call inspiration. When we inspire ourselves with something noble, gradually our emotion will be distilled and the clay and the mud